Hi, welcome to Sunday dinner at our house. Today we're going to make a beef pot roast. This is a beef chuck. We're going to salt and pepper it. And for the initial cooking, we're going to use what's called a mirepoix: celery, carrots, onion, which is 2 parts onion, 1 part celery, 1 part carrot. Also use bay leaf, 2 cloves of garlic. For the flavor, we're going to use beef bouillon, thyme, red wine, and water. About an hour before the roast is done, we're going to add our vegetables. We're going to use potatoes, onions, and carrots. And once the pot roast is done, we're going to take out the meat and reserve the juices and make a gravy. For the gravy, I like using sauteed mushrooms, lots of onions for flavor, green onion, yellow onion, and shallots. Also, I want to refresh the flavor of the herbs we use, so I'm going to use some thyme and also add some red wine and kitchen bouquet. Kitchen bouquet is a browning agent which adds a deeper color to the sauce and provides extra flavor. We're going to preheat the oven to 300 degrees. That's our cooking temperature. But first we're going to brown the meat. First we salt and pepper the meat. On both sides. We're using a heavy Dutch oven to cook our pot roast. So we're preheating the pan over medium-high heat. I'm going to add some oil to help brown the pot roast. For the browning, I generally use tongs to keep my hands clean. And now we just brown both sides, or all sides of the pot roast. Alright, the pot roast has been browned on both sides. I'm going to take it out and then brown the vegetables, or aromatics. Nice and brown. So, browning the aromatics to produce more flavor. Okay, now that the vegetables have sweated a little, I'm going to add the bay leaf and the garlic and saute about 30 more minutes, or 30 more seconds. After which I'm going to add the wine and the beef broth. Now that the garlic has sweated for 30 seconds, I'm going to add some red wine to deglaze the pan, get these nice tasty brown bits off the bottom and incorporate it into the sauce. That's probably a half a cup of wine, and just scrape. Okay, the wine is starting to evaporate. I'm going to add some water and follow that up with adding some of the beef base. Okay, the beef base is a paste. Generally, 1 teaspoon is about equivalent to a bouillon cube, so I start out usually with a couple tablespoons. But I'm going to let that melt. I'll add the beef and then adjust the water accordingly. The beef base has dissolved. I'm going to add our thyme. I just usually add about 1/4 to a half teaspoon, and I usually like to smash it with my fingers to release more flavors. And next we add the beef back into the pot. Now I adjust the water to make sure it comes up to about halfway to 3/4 up the pot roast. And that looks about 3/4. Now that the liquid has come back to a simmer, I'm going to put the cover on and put it into the 300-degree oven. Generally, we like to cook a pot roast about an hour per pound. Alright, the pot roast has been cooking for about 2 hours, so I'm going to put in the vegetables. So here are the vegetables, potatoes. I generally like to put the potatoes first, so they're in the juices and they could absorb and pick up all the flavorful bits from the juices. Then after that, carrots, onions, it doesn't matter because it all cooks about the same. So this goes back in the oven for about another hour, 45 minutes to an hour, and see you then. While the vegetables are cooking in the oven, I'm going to saute the mushrooms and brown the mushrooms. So I start out with oil, and then I like adding a little butter just to give it a little more flavor. And as that melts, I'm going to start adding the mushrooms. So first I'll brown the mushrooms, then later on I'll add the onions and the shallots and the green onion. But the key is to slowly saute and brown the mushrooms. It helps to add a little salt to add the flavor, and as you know, salt draws out moisture. I'll add a little pepper too, because I like the flavor. Mushrooms have browned, and now I'm going to add the onions, thyme, and shallots and green onions. Oh, I forgot to mention that I put garlic in here, so I did add a clove of smashed garlic. So here I'm just going to let this cook down some more. And as you can tell, the bottom of the pan is starting to create fond, the tasty brown bits. So once this is cooked down a little more, I'm just going to add some red wine to deglaze the pan. And now I'm ready for the pot roast juices to make a gravy. Okay, the mushrooms and shallots and onions have cooked down. There's nice tasty brown bits on the side, so I'm going to deglaze the pan with some red wine and just let it cook down a little and wait for the I've added the red wine and to deglaze the pan. The pot roast isn't done yet, but this is pretty much done and ready for the pot roast, so I'm going to just turn off the heat and put it to the side. The pot roast is done, so what I've done is plated the pot roast, so I'm going to cover that. But what I'll do is strain out the juices and add it to the mushrooms. I've removed the meat and the potatoes and onions and carrots and turned on the burner to bring it up to a boil. Now I'm going to add the mushrooms we sauteed earlier and let it reduce. Bring it to the boil, let it to reduce. The gravy's done, and now it's time to cut the meat. The meat is rested about 10-15 minutes, so you could either shred it with a fork or just cut it with a knife.